Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about one of the most critical developments in the Russia-Ukraine war, a development that is reshaping not only the battlefield but also the larger balance of power in Eastern Europe. This is the story of Ukraine's increasing use of the American-made ATACMS missile system, and how these strikes are systematically dismantling Russia's military positions in Crimea and beyond. The Kursk Air Base strike, the latest and perhaps most shocking incident, took place at the Russian air base in Kursk known as Kino. Ukrainian forces launched a coordinated strike using at least 7 ATACMS missiles. Footage from the night of the attack showed the skies illuminated by explosions, with fragments scattering across the runway. Even video captured from inside a vehicle at the base revealed the terrifying moment when M74 submunitions detonated on the ground, sparking chaos and panic among Russian personnel. What made this strike remarkable was not just the damage but the location. Kursk Kino Air Base lies 96 kilometers from the border, and yet the missiles reached it with relative ease. Russian officials claimed that their air defenses intercepted most of the incoming weapons, but the sounds of repeated explosions and the air raid sirens told another story. For many in Russia, it was astonishing to see such a heavily defended site so easily penetrated. Ukraine's strategy in Crimea, the Kursk attack, is not an isolated event. It fits into Kiev's larger strategy to weaken Russia's grip on Crimea. Ever since Russia annexed the peninsula in 2014, Crimea has been central to Moscow's military posture in the Black Sea region. But Ukraine has been steadily eroding that advantage. For months now, Russian fighter jets such as the Su-35 and MiG-31 have largely disappeared from Crimean bases. What remains are empty hangars, damaged runways, and demoralized personnel. Putin's military is discovering that even the much-advertised S-400 air defense systems cannot reliably stop ATACMS. These missiles arrive silently, strike with precision, and leave destruction in their wake. Between 2024 and 2025, Ukraine has successfully targeted several key air bases in Crimea, including Dzyankoy, Saki, and Belbek, sending a clear message. No Russian installation is safe. The Belbek struck a turning point. One of the most symbolic attacks came in May 2024, when Ukraine struck the Belbek Air Base, located near Sevastopol. This was no ordinary raid. Belbek lies about 230 kilometers from the front lines, deep inside Russian-controlled territory. Yet the ATACMS missiles cut through the defenses and struck directly at the heart of the facility. High-resolution satellite images released afterward told the story clearly. 1 MiG-31 and 3 Su-27 fighter jets destroyed. 1 MiG-29 heavily damaged, severe burn marks near the refueling area beside the main runway, damage to hardened shelters that were previously thought to be secure. Perhaps the most significant loss was the destruction of the 92 N6 gravestone radar, a critical part of the S-400 system. Its loss created a serious gap in Russia's layered air defense network. Afterward, Russian forces scrambled to adapt. Aircraft were relocated further inland, fortified shelters were constructed, and bases reduced their visible footprints. But the illusion of security was gone. For the first time, the true vulnerability of Russian infrastructure in Crimea was visible to the world. The threat to the Kerch Bridge. Every strike on Crimea fuels speculation about Ukraine's ultimate target, the Kerch Bridge. This 19-kilometer structure is Russia's main supply artery to the peninsula. If it were destroyed, Moscow's ability to sustain its forces in Crimea could collapse overnight. ATACMS may not be a one-shot, one-kill weapon against such a massive structure, but repeated strikes on the approaches, railway junctions, and fuel depots connected to the bridge could make it unusable. Even the fear of such an attack already forces Russia to divert massive resources to defend it. Understanding ATACMS. To understand why these missiles are so effective, we need to look at the system itself. ATACMS, or the Army Tactical Missile System, is a precision-guided ballistic weapon fired from the MON 142 HIMARS and M270 launchers. Diameter, 0.6 to 1 meters. Length, about 4 meters. Range, 165 km commenting on the variant guidance. INS GPS with accuracy within a few meters. Warheads, M39 A1. Carries hundreds of M74 submunitions. Devastating against parked aircraft or vehicles. M48 M57. Carries a single 500-pound high-explosive warhead, perfect for hardened targets like radar sites or depots. The doctrine is simple: shoot and scoot. The missiles can be launched and the vehicle repositioned within minutes, making it nearly impossible for Russia to strike back at the launcher. Other major strikes in April 2024, Ukraine also struck the Dzyankoy Air Base, which lies at the northern tip of Crimea. This base was critical due to its proximity to Donbas operations. The attack destroyed multiple S-300 and S-400 systems, and satellite images confirmed the obliteration of key components. Burn marks on both runways suggested deliberate targeting to ground Russian aircraft. By June 2024, Ukraine expanded its strikes beyond airfields. One notable operation targeted the NIP-16 deep space communication facility in Vitino. Once a Cold War era tracking station for Soviet missions, the site had become a hub for Russian military communications. ATACMS missiles destroyed large antenna arrays and vital command and control infrastructure. This was not just a tactical strike. It was a blow against Russia's space and communication network. Western support in political dimensions. Ukraine first received ATACMS in 2023, when President Zelensky announced that the U.S. had transferred a limited batch. Initial versions had shorter ranges, but even these proved decisive, striking Russian bases in Bryansk and Luhansk. By spring 2024, however, Ukraine began receiving longer-range versions with up to 300 kilometers. But the condition from Washington was clear. Use them only on occupied Ukrainian territory, not inside Russia's undisputed borders. But by early 2025, evidence suggested that Kyiv had also received upgraded long-range models, expanding their reach further. This shift marked a critical turning point. With these weapons, Ukraine could systematically target every key installation in Crimea, from command centers to logistics hubs, from radar nodes to the Kerch Bridge itself. The ripple effects, the military effect of these strikes is obvious, but the economic and psychological impact is just as important. Every successful attack forces Russia to spend enormous resources on repairs, fortifications, and air defense ammunition. Air defense interceptors like the 48 N6 or 9 Man-E6 are extremely expensive. Each launch to intercept a single ATACMS or even a drone drains Russia's budget. Hardening infrastructure, building new shelters, repairing runways, relocating fuel depots requires concrete, steel, and labor. These are sunk costs that cannot be recovered. Logistics disruptions, railway delays, bridge closures, port shutdowns cause ripple effects across civilian and military supply chains. Insurance costs for shipping and transportation have risen, tourism in Crimea has collapsed, and ordinary civilians face frequent disruptions from air raid alerts and infrastructure damage. The perception of fragility is constant. Psychological pressure beyond economics. There is a psychological war at play. Each explosion in Crimea sends a message not only to Russian soldiers but also to civilians. You are not safe, even here. This undermines confidence in Moscow's ability to defend the peninsula. Families of military personnel live in fear. Migration out of Crimea is rising. The civilian population adapts to a life of shelterages and uncertainty. Over time, this constant state of alert erodes morale. Russia's response to counter these strikes. Russia is trying several measures, deploying decoys and false targets, expanding electronic warfare systems, building relocatable radars and distributed fuel depots, strengthening air defenses around the Kerch Bridge. But the deeper problem is cost. Russia can defend or repair, but each step consumes resources. And unlike Ukraine, which is backed by Western funding and weapon supplies, Moscow must carry this burden largely on its own. Why Crimea matters? Crimea is not just land. It is the symbol of Putin's rule. It represents Russia's naval power in the Black Sea, its claim of restored greatness, and its geopolitical prestige. Losing it or even appearing unable to defend it would be a devastating blow to Moscow's narrative. Every ATACMS strike in Crimea therefore carries symbolic weight far beyond the immediate damage. Each crater is a reminder that Russia's defenses are porous, its logistics fragile, and its hold on Crimea uncertain. Conclusion: Ukraine's use of ATACMS is more than just battlefield tactics. It is a long-term strategy of attrition, bleeding Russia economically, militarily, and psychologically. As each missile hits its mark, it reshapes the war's trajectory. Crimea, once considered untouchable, is now vulnerable at every corner. The Kerch Bridge, Russia's lifeline, hangs by a thread. And with continued Western support, Ukraine is proving that precision weapons can do what massive tank battles and infantry offensives could not: make Crimea increasingly indefensible. If this rhythm continues, the Kremlin may find itself fighting a war it cannot afford, on territory it cannot protect, for a prize it may ultimately lose. Thank you for watching.